entire length of this building, the whole block. Completely open to all the floors. So all the balconies look down into the pool. If they had live music playing, it would float down to the pool area. They had a glass ceiling so the sun and the stars would show through. Now today we have the Cafe Alcazar, and that's open to the public. You can enjoy your breakfast or your lunch sitting in the deep end of the pool. Now out in this area here where the parking lots are was the tennis courts and the Victorian Bicycle Club. You had to earn a license to ride a bicycle, like a regular bicycle. I'm not sure you had to have one for a horse and buggy, but you had to have one for a bike, so they had a club here to teach you how. Now we're about to turn onto Bridge Street. This is going to take us into an area of town known as Lincolnville, named after our 16th President Abraham Lincoln. First begun by emancipated slaves and then later became a very integral part of the Civil Rights Movement. So just ahead on your left is the Accord Civil Rights Museum. This is inside of the original dentist office, so the very first black dentist in town, Dr. Robert Haling. Among the artifacts inside the Accord here, there's a page of a Bible signed by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now he would come here to town very often to do his speeches and his rallies, and when he came to town, he would just stay with folks in their houses here in the neighborhood. His very favorite place to stay was this house here to our left, the home of Miss Cora Tyson. Loved her sweet tea. Now, Miss Cora Tyson's part of our living history. She just turned 102 at the beginning of June. And I'll tell you what, on occasion, she's out there on that front porch waving at us as we drive by. She is, yeah. So, as far as age of the houses, not 100% sure. 1800s for sure. Largest collection of Victorian homes, though, here in the area. So, yeah. Kind of see them dotted throughout the neighborhood here. Now we're approaching Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, and this is what we call a partial quiet zone, and all that means is I've got to go off the microphone for a moment, but let's see if I can't pull up a little snippet of a speech that was delivered by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
I had a chance to talk with many people, some of whom are considered some of the very outstanding leaders and people of our nation. I believe that I was uttering the truth when I said to them that the Negroes of St. Augustine, Florida, and those that have come in from other communities and their allies in the white community are determined to march the streets of this city until the walls of segregation come crumbling down.
Here to our right is the St. Benedict Lamore Catholic Church, the very first Catholic church here for the black community. And then to our left is the St. Paul AME Church. That speech you just heard was delivered right here at this church by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
To the right.
Our next stop is stop number 11. That's our Lincolnville Museum and Cultural Center. Among the artifacts here at the Lincolnville Museum and Cultural Center are those from during the Civil Rights Movement here in town. If you'll be exiting here at stop number 11, please remain seated until I've come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Once you hear the bell, then you can safely exit to your right towards the sidewalk, making sure to turn around and go down backwards, like you're climbing down a ladder, holding onto the handles and the uprights. Now, Lincolnville Museum and Cultural Center here to our right, that is inside of the original Excelsior High School, the very first all-black high school here in town. And among some of the artifacts inside, there is a countertop from the local Woolworths, where some students had a sit-down protest. There's a fingerprint card. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested on one of his visits here. And a piano played by Ray Charles. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a moment. Now, as we exit the stop, when we go in front of the building here, you'll see at the very top of it, it still says the Excelsior High School at the top. All right, we are all clear. No more on, no more off. Trolley's in motion. A reminder to please stay seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. So Ray Charles, so he attended the Florida School for the Deaf and the Blind, which is located about a half mile north of our stop number 1, the old jail. Went there from the ages of 7 to 14. And when he got a little bit closer to those teenage years, he'd make his way down here to Lincolnville and went over to the Oddfellows Hall to jam on some music. And that piano that he played over at the Oddfellows Hall is here at the Lincolnville Museum and Cultural Center. Now, most major cities throughout the United States have a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue or Boulevard, something to that nature. I'm sure many of your towns have one as well. But there's only two that he actually marched on. And you're on one of them right now. The other one's located in Atlanta, Georgia. Now we're approaching a second quiet zone, and it's going to last about 2.5 blocks. But as we turn the corner, here to your left is the St. Cyprian's Episcopal Church. This is one of only 9 Episcopal churches in the United States for the black community. And we are back. So St. Augustine played a very critical role during the Civil Rights Movement. Those speeches, rallies, and marches that took place here in Lincolnville were very integral in what led to the signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Our next stop is stop number 12. That's the St. Augustine Distillery. So the building the distillery is in was once home to the power company, Florida Power and Light. And in the early days, they were using distilled water. Well, they found out when they froze the distilled water, it actually stayed frozen a lot longer than regular water. So they turned the other half of the building into an ice plant, started to make those big blocks of ice. And then they would deliver it through town. Now, one of the places they would deliver to, so we are following along to our left here, the San Sebastian River. Now, the river's down up over this hill here, but you can see a lot of the boats out here. So in the early 30s, the San Sebastian River here, this was the hot spot for the shrimping industry. In fact, they say they had so many shrimp boats out on the river, crammed out there at one time, that you could just about walk across the river by foot, just by walking across all the boats out there. But when they started to produce the ice, they would take those ice blocks out to the shrimpers or the fishermen that were out on the river. They would go around town. Any resident that didn't have electricity yet would receive those ice blocks over to Henry Flagler's hotels as well, I'm sure. Now the building today, so the side that we're turning in on, so this side of the building here is the former ice plant. Today it is a restaurant called the Ice Plant Restaurant. So you can sit inside of the old ice plant there and enjoy a meal. They also have an outside, upstairs outside patio area as well. And as we pull in here, in the right corner is one of the trucks that used to deliver the ice through town. Looks like they're still making good use of it today as a storage shed. And the other half of the building, former power company, is our current day distillery. They have tasting tours. You can sample some of their in-house whiskey, rum, vodka, or gin. You can also purchase bottles to take home as well. If you're exiting here at stop number 12, please remain seated till I come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Once you hear the bell, then you can safely exit to your left towards the building, turning around to go down backwards, just like you're climbing down a ladder, holding onto the handles and the uprights. Now, also nearby here to our right, on the other side of this building, is the St. Augustine Fish Camp. Real popular location for some local seafood. It's also right on the San Sebastian River, so good views, good food. Alright, thanks folks. Enjoy.
Really? So you can get those chickens. She's scared.
I didn't want to say anything.
Oh, did she see it?
No.
All right, we are all clear. No more on, no more off. Trolley's in motion. Reminder to please stay seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. So while Henry Flagler had his 2 hotels, he was the largest employer here in town, which makes a lot of sense. The size of those 2 hotels, can you imagine how many people that they needed to keep it up and running? Especially having all those switchers running around, just turn all the switches on and off all day long. But down the street here to our left, this tan brick building, that was the 2nd largest employer, the Sola Carcaba Cigar Factory. That was started right around 1908, 1909. And the top 3 floors were for the production of the cigars. The bottom floor was for the storage of the tobacco. And they employed over 90% women. That's because women's hands and fingers were a lot smaller. They could roll those cigars a lot tighter, a lot faster. However, even in spite of that, they had a contract where they needed to produce 8 million cigars in a 5-year span, and they just could not keep up with the demands of that contract. Now, the building is still in use today. That's our oldest industrial building here in town, and they've reconfigured it inside for several smaller businesses and offices in there. Coming up to your left, this corner of the fence is going to give you a glimpse of the San Sebastian River that we couldn't see earlier. They've cleared out some area here. You'll be able to see a little bit of it. And to our right, this is the back side of Whetstone's Chocolate. This is their own factory. They make their own chocolate. They do occasionally offer tours through the factory, and then in the front of the building is a little store where you can just go in and purchase some. Now, I don't know about y'all, but when I hear chocolate factory, I think of 2 things. First, I think of Lucy and Ethel. And then I think of Willy Wonka, but it has to be the original Willy Wonka, Gene Wilder. Now, if you're looking to get over to Whetstone's, our next stop, 13, will get you the closest, and that's across the street here, the San Sebastian Winery. Now, they also have tasting tours. They have 12 in-house wines, 8 of those made from the muscadine grape. That muscadine grape is grown over in Clearmont, which is over near Orlando. If you're exiting here at stop 13, the San Sebastian Winery, please remain seated until I come to a complete stop and hear the bell. Then you can safely exit to your right towards the building, turning around and going down backwards like you're climbing down a ladder, holding on to the handles and the uprights. Now here at the San Sebastian Winery, their restaurant's up on the rooftop. It's called the Cellar Upstairs. Actually, the full name, La Cocina, the Cellar Upstairs. And then that river comes right around this front part here, so you get some really good views of the river from up there as well. All right, thank you, folks. Oh, you guys are going to switch? Okay.
Oh, no.
Good plan.
After that. Or before that. Yeah.
Because then we have to do it. Well, from the water and the bridges, those are too far off from my neighbors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I'm good with whatever. I probably have to do it.
Yeah. It's 12. Yeah.
All right. We are all clear. No more on, no more off. Trolley's in motion. If you just joined us, welcome aboard. My name is Deb. Please remain seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. There's no smoking, vaping, or consumption of alcohol. And this is a narrated history tour, so we do please ask you keep all personal and cell phone conversations to a minimum. So the building that the winery is in, along with 3 buildings that are across the street to the left, we'll see those in a minute here as we turn the corner. They all have blue diamonds on them. The 3 across the street today are known as the Triplets. Those are Flagler dorms. But all 4 of these buildings here originally were the headquarters for the Florida East Coast Railway. Any guesses who ran the Florida East Coast Railway? That's right, Henry Flagler. So that statue that we saw in front of Flagler College, he had an office here. And they made that statue while he was still alive. And it wasn't that he didn't appreciate it, but he just didn't really want to see it every day. So he made him hide it and keep it way in the back. But originally the train only went as far as Jacksonville. So Henry Flagler, when he built his 2 hotels, his guests, most of them coming down from the northeast, had to get off the train in Jacksonville and then get onto a boat or into a horse and buggy to make the rest of the journey here. Now, neither of those are very comfortable, not to mention how much extra time it would have taken to get here. So Henry Flagler simply bought the railroad, bought some land, laid more tracks, and brought the train right here to St. Augustine. And then he figured, you know what, I guess I might as well just keep going while I'm at it. And eventually that train went all the way to Key West. Now, it's still in operation today. It doesn't go quite as far as Key West anymore, but it is still in operation today. Now, this land here to our right, this at one time all was the Yalaha Orange Plantation, blood oranges. Stretched back all the way back to Lincolnville where we were, back to the winery, all the way into town. And then to our left was the Markland Plantation. So at one point in time, this entire area, for as far as you can see, was nothing but orange groves. And then unfortunately, one of our hard frosts hit here in Florida and it destroyed those crops. That's right, on occasion, Florida does freeze. But coming up to our left, we're going to see a white picket fence, and behind that is the Markland House, part of the Markland Plantation. And one of our former mayors, Dr. Andrew Anderson, he actually lived there for a time. He was also the personal physician for Henry Flagler. Here it is to your left, the Markland House. It's currently run by Flagler College. You can rent it out for events. They say that Dr. Anderson, Henry Flagler, would hang out on that front porch there and eat oranges. So Franklin Smith, the gentleman whose winter home became our current-day Villa Zareta Museum, he decided to throw his hat in the ring, and he built the Hotel Casa Monica on the opposite corner of Henry Flagler's 2 hotels. So we're going to see it coming up soon to our right. Well, the 2 men were friends until he became the competition. Henry Flagler didn't like competition. But it was taking a long time for him to open. So Henry Flagler kept on approaching him, and he's like, hey man, I can help you out, I'll take it off your hands, I'll buy it from you. Well, eventually he just straight up asked him, he's like, dude, what is taking you so long to open? And he said, well, the furnishings I ordered, I only received enough to furnish 4 rooms. Well, I can't open with only 4 rooms. But he was also losing a lot of money by not being open yet. So he eventually caved in, sold it to Mr. Flagler, who immediately changed the name to the Hotel Cordova. And right after that, the rest of those furnishings showed up. Well, back then everything was delivered by the train. And Henry Flagler, he owned the railroad. A coincidence? I'll let you decide. But I'll tell you what, I think Franklin Smith got the last laugh though, because out of all 3 of these here on this corner, the only one still a hotel and back to its original name is the Hotel Casa Monica here across the street to our right. Now the next part of town is all going to be on your left-hand side. It is known as the Plaza de la Constitucion. So by Spanish decree, the center of town had a few requirements. Had to have a meeting place or place for government. In the center of town there had to be a Catholic church, and they had to have an open air market, a place where they could buy, sell, and trade their goods. So here to our left is the governor's house. That was first established in 1598. Now if you look across the plaza to the other side, that's the Cathedral Basilica, the very first Catholic church here. A couple monuments in the plaza as well. This tall monument here represents the Spanish Constitution of 1812. The open air market down here at the other end of the plaza. And then another monument coming up after this pedestrian crosswalk sign. It's called St. Augustine Foot Soldiers, and that represents the civil rights movement here in town. Then we're going to loop around the plaza, and as we do, the statue to our left is Ponce de Leon. If you recall, he was the first governor of Puerto Rico and claimed this land for Spain back in 1513, naming it La Florida. Now this plaza area is also one of our highlights for our upcoming Night of Lights. That's our holiday festivities. Starts November 15th. Goes through the new year. We put up somewhere around like 1 million Christmas lights up in town. And you can jump on our trolley. We'll take you around and show you those lights. And this plaza area here is one of the highlighted areas. So they've been hard to work for about 2-3 weeks already getting those lights put up. That's why you see Christmas decorations before it's even Halloween, because it takes a while to put those all up. Our next stop is stop 14. That is our Cathedral Basilica. And also our last stop is St. George Street if you're exiting here at stop number 14. Please remain seated till I come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Once you hear the bell, safely exit to your right towards the sidewalk, turning around to get out backwards like you're climbing down a ladder. Holding on to those handles and uprights. Now the cathedral is open during the day for self-guided tours. It's free. You can just go on in and take a look around. And then in this end of St. George Street, one of our ticket booths to help you out with any questions that you might have. See what we can do here on the row seat 4. So some of y'all might have to split up a little bit for now, but we should be able to get everybody on. Our governor's house across the street here, they are currently a cultural center and museum. They have rotating art exhibits inside. Those are free. You can go inside and take a look at those exhibits. They also have clean restrooms inside as well.
I was like, what is on the floor here? So I was like, I better not step on his tail.
I do.
No, yeah, just a museum now.
Where's Sue? Where's Sue?
She's sitting in front of Andy.
Oh.
How long ago did you need?
And he's bringing up the rear.
This one has been operated on like 6 months.
All right, looks like we're all clear. We're going to say no more on, no more off. This trolley is in motion. If you just joined us, welcome aboard. My name is Deb. Please remain seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. There's no smoking, vaping, or consumption of alcohol. This is a narrated history tour, so we do please ask that you keep all personal and cell phone conversations down to a minimum.
You also saw.
So the Hotel Ponce de Leon, today's Flagler College, which is straight in front of us now. The property for the hotel actually used to come out to right about here. And coming up to your left, if you look kind of between these, right after these trees here, you'll see a fountain. That was part of the hotel's property. So fountains back then were a sign of wealth and prosperity. So Henry Flagler put a lot of fountains around all of his properties. Those are all still here today. Now this part of the property for the hotel would have been a little bit more of a quieter area for guests to come and maybe read a book or read the newspaper around the fountain. But as we double back around the plaza, you'll notice we've added, there's a cannon on either side of that fountain. In fact, through this plaza area here, we've got quite a few cannons. And if you're wondering at all if any of the cannons you see in town are even real, yes, they are. All of the cannons were found through town. Some of them were actually pulled from the Matanzas River. This one here you can see a little closer to the left here. So they've all been preserved as part of our history here in the oldest city.
This is a hotel.
Now just after the intersection here on your right to this tall steeple, that is the Trinity Parish Episcopal Church. That is the second oldest church here in town, dates back to 1821. And then just after the church, if you look at the very first or second set of door handles, you'll see it still says Woolworths. That's the Woolworths where the students had to sit down protest during the Civil Rights Movement, in which the countertop they sat at is at our Lincolnville Museum and Cultural Center at our stop number 11. So yeah, it'll be this set or the second set here. I just think it's cool they kept the doors. Now also coming up to your right, in between these two buildings there is an arch. This is Avila Street. Avila is the oldest street in the United States. It dates back to 1572. Down Avila Street is the Spanish Military Hospital. They used to treat the soldiers from the fort, from the barracks. fact, the street was originally called Hospital Street, renamed Aviles Street after our founder, Pedro Menendez de Aviles. That Spanish military hospital opened during the daytime for ticketed tours. And then Aviles Street's part of our art district. You'll find some art galleries up and down Aviles Street there. Our next stop coming up right around the corner here, stop 15, that's the Municipal Marina. If you're exiting at stop 15, please remain seated till I come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Once you hear the bell, safely exit to your right towards the sidewalk only, turning around and going down backwards like you're climbing down a ladder. Basically the opposite way you climbed up, holding onto the handles and the uprights.
Here, it's nice.
So our marina here to the left, they offer several tours that'll take you out on the bay and on the river. We've got daytime, nighttime, scenic boats, party boats, eco boat, like a glass bottom boat. Take you out on the river and teach about the sea life out there. I hear they drop a microphone down in the water, you can hear the clicking of the shrimp. I guess when you're finished, then you can come next door to O.C. White's here and have some shrimp. Alright, all clear. No more on, no more off. Trolley's in motion. Reminder to please stay seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. Now another tour that you can take down the river, if you look to the left here, is our Black Raven pirate ship. Take a ride down the river and hang out with the pirates. Maybe become a pirate yourself. We actually do have a pretty big pirate community here in town, so you just never know who you're going to run into. Now again, to our left here is the Matanzas River, and on the other side, Anastasia Island. If you look over on the island, the black and white stripes, that is the St. Augustine Lighthouse. That's our second lighthouse. The very first one, unfortunately, was a victim to the erosion from the ocean back in 1880. Now you can climb all the way to the top of that lighthouse. It'll take you 219 steps to get up there. Of course, then another 219 steps to get back down to the bottom. But I'll tell you, here's my strategy if you need to use one. First of all, don't count the steps. But every 2 flights, there's a little landing, and you can take a little break. That's what I do. The view is well worth the effort, but if you need to stay on the ground, plenty to do. They have a museum, you can go through the bottom part of the lighthouse, they have the lightkeeper's home, and they have paths and trailways on the property as well.
That's where we pick up the...
Now speaking of homes, our next stop, 16, the oldest house, the Gonzalez Alvarez house, coming up around this bend here. So in the early days of St. Augustine, they made everything out of wood. So when we had those early attacks and raids, the pirate raids and the military attacks, they simply just came in and burned the town down. In fact, the town was burned down like 9 times. Till we found that coquina. We used that coquina for the fort, for the city gates. They finally said, maybe we should start to use that to build our houses. Well, it was a good idea, because those houses are still here today. If you're exiting here at stop 16, the oldest house, please remain seated until I come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Then you can safely exit to your right towards the sidewalk, turning around to go down backwards like you're climbing down a ladder, holding onto the handles and uprights.
We were at it already? Yeah.
So the oldest house is the one here to your right, the white with the green. So the attack that we had in 1702, the British attack known as the Queen Anne's War, it was right after that. Because that one, they really came through and literally just burned everything. The whole town was devastated. And that's when they built the wall around the city. And that's also then when they started to use the coquina for their houses. So this is the oldest house dating back to the early 1700s when they were rebuilding after that attack in 1702. Now, we were here for 200 years before that. Just not a lot of structures to fortify from that time frame. However, they do have record that there was a string of wooden houses on this property dating back to about 1650. Now, if you recall also the early architecture, the Spanish only built 1-story houses. So it's just the first floor that's the oldest house. The British came in later and added that second story and added the balcony. Now we're going to loop around and we'll make another pass by, so if you can't quite see it because of the canopy here, you'll be able to get another view of it. But so definitely you can see the time period differences, the cultural differences, and also the materials that they've used to build it as well. All right, all clear. No more on, no more off. Charlie's in motion. Reminder to please stay seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. Now this is a ticketed tour, but you get into everything on the complex. So not only do you get to go through the oldest house, you can go through this house here to our right, the Tovar House. That's more mid-1700s. And on the first floor of the Tovar House, they do have a little section set aside to take you through the history of surfing. It's kind of random, but it's kind of cool. Now, here to our right, this is all part of the complex. This white building here, there's a room on the first floor that you can go into, and they have a room of maps. And it's all the maps of the town of St. Augustine as it's looked over all the centuries. And I'll tell you, the only thing that's really changed is the shoreline from the changes in the water. The structure of the town itself, not a lot has changed over all those hundreds of years. In fact, one of the maps shows when the wall was completely all the way around the city. And then this used to be an active archaeological site, so they do have a museum inside as well. I'll show you a lot of the artifacts that they found on and around the property. A little timeline of the history of those artifacts as well. Now the building to our right, that is the St. Francis Barracks. Originally a Franciscan friary. Today it's the headquarters for the Florida National Guard. Now down at the end of the barracks down this street, you'll find the National Cemetery. And inside the cemetery, not only are the white headstones in formation, but we also have 3 coquina pyramids. And those represent, we had about 12 to 1,400 soldiers that were re-interred here that had fought during the Seminole Wars. So those stone pyramids represent those soldiers that were brought here to this cemetery that fought during those wars. Here to our right, that is the Bridge of Lions. That was built in 1927 to connect our downtown to Anastasia Island. The 4 pillars in the center, those are the only original part of the bridge. The rest has been reconstructed over the years. And then the center is an active drawbridge. So many times throughout the day when our larger boats need to get through, you'll see that raised up. Now some of the other attractions on the island alongside the lighthouse, we have the Alligator Farm. We also have the St. Augustine Amphitheater. They've got great concerts out there. Fort Matanzas. Or you can go straight across the island, head out to the Atlantic Ocean. We've got St. Augustine Beach and Anastasia State Park out there. Now the Bridge of Lions earned its name because we were gifted 2 lion statues. So Dr. Andrew Anderson, he's the one that was the former mayor here that had lived at the Markland House. He commissioned those 2 lion statues from an Italian sculptor. And in fact, the material the sculptor used came from the same quarry that Michelangelo used, which is really cool. But once those lion statues were completed, they were gifted and placed at the foot of the bridge on the town side. So as we go around the bend here, go through the intersection, they'll be on your right-hand side. Their names are Firm and Faithful. And then a few years later, they made a couple replicas out of granite. Put those on the Anastasia Island side. Their names are Peace and Happiness. There's also a pedestrian walkway on both sides of the bridge that you can, it's protected with a concrete barrier. You can walk up and over the bridge. It's just under a half mile to go one way. Gorgeous views of the river and of the island and the bayfront side here. Daytime or nighttime, it's all lit up at night. It's pretty cool. And then also when we go through the intersection, straight across from the bridge on the left-hand side, you'll see a tall building. And you'll see it's the only tall building. That's called the Treasury Building. And when that was also built in 1927. And when it was built, the town was like, oh, okay, we didn't expect it to be that tall. And so they put an ordinance in where the buildings can't be any taller than 35 feet tall because they just didn't want to disrupt the historic aesthetic of the town. So That's why it's the only tall building in town. This building here to our left on the corner here, that was the original home to Potter's Wax Museum, which is at our stop 3. And at one time, this also was a department store. And they called those department stores surprise stores. That's because nobody knew what they were going to sell until the boxes showed up. So it was like they'd just get the stock would come in and they'd open it up and it would be like, surprise. I don't know, I picture it kind of like our current day, maybe like a dollar store, kind of like a thing, you know, where it has a little bit of everything. I don't know, that's what I picture, but... Alright, should be our turn next to get through the intersection here. Alright, here we go. Firm and faithful on your right, and the Treasury Building on your left. Our next stop, stop's number 17. That is our fort, the Castillo de San Marcos. So this is our 10th fort. First 9 made of wood, burned down. Until we found that coquina materials. Again, the coquina mined from the ocean floor over from Anastasia Island. They had a quarry set up. But that coquina took forever for it to set, for it to cure and harden. That's why it took 23 years to build this fort. Finally completed in 1695. Now, that coquina proved to be real beneficial because it's very porous and absorbent. So we would have attackers out here in the bay, and they would be shooting cannonballs at the side of the fort. That coquina simply absorbed the cannonballs, so we were never defeated in battle. In fact, a lot of times the attackers had to leave because they ran out of ammunition, or our soldiers would go out at night, take those cannonballs out from the side of the wall, and if they were still good, we would just shoot it back at them. They would also go out at night, patch up any of the holes, so by the next morning it looked like nothing ever even happened. If you're exiting here at stop number 17, please remain seated until I come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Once you hear the bell, you can safely exit to your right towards the fort, turning around and going down backwards like you're climbing down a ladder, holding on to the handles and the uprights. Alright, thank you folks. Watch your step. Now the fort is a national monument, part of the National Park Service, so the inside ticketed tours are currently closed, but you can walk around the outside perimeter of the fort. And this is also a really great spot to stop and take a little break with our inlet here from the Atlantic Ocean. You got a good breeze. This bay here actually originally was called the Bay of the Dancing Dolphins by the natives. And that's because at any point in time you might see some dolphins out there. Still today, they love that inlet area there.
Oh, really?
It's pretty cool. Alright, we are all clear. No more on, no more off. Charlie's in motion. If you just joined us, welcome aboard. My name is Deb. Please remain seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. There's no smoking, vaping, or consumption of alcohol. This is a narrated history tour, so we do please ask you to keep all personal and cell phone conversations to a minimum.
Welcome to St. Augustine, my friend. Yeah, where's the rum?
Now you can, like I said, walk around the perimeter of the fort. There is a sidewalk up on top here. They do have some signage for the history. And you can also walk down along the main part. So on the other side of this hill, there's a moat that goes all the way around the fort. But the reason you can walk on it is it's the original Spanish design. It's called a dry moat. It's just grass and dirt. So no water to contend with. Well, unless we have a big storm, then there might be some water to contend with. But presumably part of the reason for that is the material that the fort's made out of, that coquina. You know, we pulled it from the ocean floor, and it only hardened when we took it out of the water. So if they would have surrounded it with water over time, it may have started to disintegrate, crack, and crumble back to its original form. So thankfully nobody wanted to test the theory, and they left it to its original dry moat, and we still have our fort here today. So the late 1800s kind of started the boom, if you will, of the Northerners coming down to build their businesses and winter homes down here. Henry Flagler, Franklin Smith, some of the first to come down and do that. There was also a gentleman, his name was William Morton. So he was partners with J.D. Rockefeller and Henry Flagler in Standard Oil. A very successful, wealthy businessman in his own right. And he came down here to build his winter home as well. It's going to be coming up just after this building on our right-hand side. It's kind of tucked back behind. He called it the Castle Warden. And Mr. Warden, he could not wait to have an heir to be able to leave his fortunes to, his business to. It took him 14 tries. He had 13 daughters before he had a son. So coming up here to our right, you'll see the Castle Warden. Now, definitely room for 14 kids here in this building. But at the time, they only had one bathroom. Now, later, this was purchased by a Pulitzer Prize-winning author. Her name was Marjorie Rawlings. She wrote the Yearling. And she turned it into a hotel. And I would hope at that point that she added more bathrooms. But she did keep the name. She called it the Castle Warden Hotel. And one of the guests here at the hotel, his name was Robert Ripley. Now, Mr. Ripley, he was a traveler of the world, a collector of oddities and all things unusual and unique. And when he stayed here at the Castle Warden Hotel, he fell in love with the building. And he really had hoped that he would have an opportunity to purchase it. But unfortunately, it was not available until about 2 years after he passed. But his estate was given the opportunity, and this here became the very first Ripley's Believe It or Not. And it's also our stop 18. So this house is most of Mr. Ripley's original collections of those things he collected on his travels, but also a few of the additional collections that are out here in the parking lot. This horse here to our left, that's made out of the bumpers from cars. And then also coming up to your left, you'll see an anchor. This anchor was pulled from our Matanzas River, which again was named after the massacre that took place in 1565 by Pedro Menendez against the French. I would love to see the boat that anchor came from. If you're exiting here at stop 18, please remain seated till I come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Then you can safely exit to your right, turning around and going down backwards like climbing down a ladder, holding the handles and uprights. This here to our left, that's a 1900-year-old redwood tree. Used to stand 267 feet tall. When they cut it down, they cut it in sections. This was the fourth section. And then they hand-carved the inside out. There is a 4-room house inside of there. Believe it or not. I just like to say that. I'll tell you the voice I hear, they had a show, Ripley's Believe It or Not show back on, I think it was early 80s maybe, was Jack Palance was the host. And I hear his voice when I say it. Alright, here we go. No more on, no more off. Trolley's in motion. A reminder, please stay seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. Here to our right, this tall hedge. You see there's a head sticking out over that hedge. So back behind there is an exact replica of Michelangelo's David. And I do mean an exact replica. And David used to be right out here at the corner. In fact, his pedestal's still here. He used to stand right at the entrance here. And you can only imagine what kind of a distraction David was to those trying to drive through this intersection. So I believe it was for safety purposes that they told David he couldn't stand on the street corner anymore. He had to step back a little bit and get covered up with some hedges. Now our next stop is right next door. That's our stop 19, our Welcome Center, here to our right. You can purchase tickets to our other attractions. We've got our Potter's Wax Museum, the old jail, the oldest store, our Ghost and Gravestones tour, the ones that goes out at night, tells you the ghost stories. If you do take that tour, this is where you'll start. It's from our Welcome Center here. It's also a souvenir gift shop. Has clean restrooms. I believe they have some like drinks and snacks that you can purchase too. Now if you're exiting here at stop 19, please remain seated until I come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Once you hear the bell, then you can safely exit to your right towards the building. Turning around to get out backwards like you're climbing down a ladder. Hold on to the handles and uprights.
So this is the beginning, right? Number one.
All right, thank you folks. Watch your step.
See, 22 ends, and you just go over every one. And one will get us all the way back down to the hotel.
No, as soon as like you want to and remember how to get there.
They got like
I've smelled a lot of good places, but I don't know where they are.
All right. You folks looking to board on, or did you just exit off of? Were you looking to board on? No, you guys just got off? Okay. Sorry, it was a mix of everybody getting on and off, so I couldn't quite tell. All right, looks like we are good then. All clear. No more on, no more off. Charlie's in motion. If you just joined us, welcome aboard. My name is Deb. Please remain seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. There's no smoking, vaping, or consumption of alcohol. It is a narrated history tour, so we do please ask that you keep all personal and cell phone conversations to a minimum. So this area of town here, this was once known as the Abbott Tract. Lady by the name of Lucy Abbott. She actually inherited this land a little bit after the Civil War, and she wanted to develop it. Well, Miss Lucy was a little ahead of her time, because back then women couldn't build things, sell things, have businesses. In fact, they weren't even supposed to handle money. So, she used her younger brother's name, went on to put up 127 homes here in this area. Today, it's known as Uptown San Marco, and out of those 127 homes, all but 5 are still standing today. Most are still homes, some are businesses, but Miss Lucy definitely ahead of her time, but also still leaving her mark here on this town. Our next stop is stop 20. That's the Mission Nombre de Dios, or Name of God. So coming up to your right, through this fence across the property, you'll see what's called the Great Cross. It stands 208 feet high. That's where this colony of St. Augustine first began back in 1565, in which we are the oldest continuously inhabited European settlement in the United States. And yes, you still have to say all those words for it to count. Now here on the property, everything's free. Inside they have some exhibits and artifacts, take you through the early stages of this colony. A little bit about the folks that came over. Pedro Menendez, he brought over about 1,200 Spaniards to get this settlement started. And then on the property, you can go right out to the base of the Great Cross. They also have a display out there to teach you about when the Spanish met the natives to have the first Mass and first Thanksgiving. And then they have the stations of the cross as well. If you're exiting here at stop 20, please remain seated until I come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Then you can safely exit to your right towards the cross, turning around to go down backwards like you're climbing down a ladder, holding on to the handles and the uprights. Now also here on property, thank you folks, on the other side of the pond is the Lady of the Leche Cemetery and Shrine, Lady of the Leche, Lady of the Milk. And on the other side of the cross, completely open to the river. That's that breeze we're feeling coming through. I'll tell you, this spot here is really unique for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's free. That's hard to find. But it's where the very first settlement in the entire United States started. So as far as history, can't really beat it. But it's also a very peaceful, serene, scenic place to just take a little walk around. Alright, we are all clear. No more on, no more off. Charlie's in motion. If you just joined us, welcome aboard. My name is Deb. Please remain seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. Our next stop, stop 21. We're going to go visit the oldest resident here in St. Augustine. We call him the Old Senator. And the Old Senator, he comes in at over 650 years old. The Old Senator, well, he's a live oak tree. We're going to turn into the Villa 1565 here, and you cannot miss him. He's going to be straight ahead on your right-hand side. There he is there, the Old Senator, standing there for over 650 years. Enter stop 21. If you'll be exiting here at stop 21, please remain seated until I come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Once you hear the bell, safely exit to your right towards the tree, turning around to go down backwards like you're climbing down a ladder. Hold down to the handles and the uprights. So 650 years, just to give you a little context for that. So St. Augustine just celebrated their 460th birthday. The land itself was claimed for Spain about 500 years ago. So this guy was here for at least 150 years before any of that even happened. Back with our native friends, the Timucuan. So it's pretty remarkable he's withstood all the weather and storms of Florida. Now, the Old Senator is also what we call the love tree here in St. Augustine. We have 7 of them in town. And that is where a palm tree grows straight through the center of the live oak tree, and they both continue to thrive. Now, this one's a little harder to see because the palm tree is really short. It's kind of like this palm tree right next to me. So the top of it only comes out right where those limbs start to branch off. So the top of the palm tree is kind of stuck right there in the center. But but a really good example is near our stop number 3, our Potter's Wax Museum. On the back side of Potter's Wax Museum's Talamato Cemetery, and on the front corner of the cemetery, there's a really good example. Super tall palm tree, super tall live oak tree, but you can see the full trunk coming out of that trunk of the live oak tree. And they're called love trees. So they are said that if you kiss your significant other underneath the love tree, that your love will remain eternal. And everybody all together, aww. I mean, it's real. I'm not kidding. But it's just fun to have everybody say that. All right, here we go. We are all clear. No more on, no more off. Charlie's in motion. A reminder to please stay seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. Now, as we exit out of the parking lot here, we're going to be turning onto Magnolia Avenue, which was named one of the 10 most beautiful streets in the United States by the National Geographic. But there's something missing from Magnolia Avenue. Any guesses?
Magnolia.
That's right, the magnolias. So they were destroyed by one of our hard frosts, just like the orange groves. But we have a canopy of live oaks that's just as beautiful. So if you'd like a photo, you're going to look to the left. And I'm going to turn a little bit slower so you guys get a good view of this canopy as it comes into view. Now this stringy stuff hanging all over the place is called Spanish moss. Well, I'm originally from up north, and I learned something new about Spanish moss. It's not Spanish, and it's not moss. It's actually an air plant derived from the pineapple family. Now they used it in the early days to make mattresses and pillows. They would stuff it into material or fabric. So Henry Ford, when he was making the first automobiles, he used it for the seat cushions, to stuff inside the seat cushions. But they forgot to tell him he had to boil it first. There's a little red bug called a chigger that lives inside of there. So whoever bought those first cars got a little extra surprise in their seat. Now to our right, that wall is called a tabby wall. Those are oyster shells. So this here was the village of Seloy for the Timucuan, and they had a pretty hearty diet of oysters. They would use the shells for jewelry, for tools, but then they found out when they mixed it with sand and water, it stuck together. So they started to make these tabby walls to protect their property. This is our stop 22, the Fountain of Youth, which is on the former village of Seloy. So you get to see a little of how the village was set up. They also have a planetarium on site. They have active demonstrations for blacksmithing and the shooting of artillery. Still an active archaeological site. And then, of course, the Fountain of Youth. You can grab a cup, take a sip. Let me know how it goes for you. I've been coming here about 125 years. If you'll be exiting here at stop 22, please remain seated until I come to a complete stop and you hear the bell. Once you hear the bell, safely exit to your left. Turning around to go down backwards like you're climbing down a ladder, holding on to the handles and the uprights. Alright, thank you folks. Now here on property, if you can't see them, you can hear them. There are peacocks everywhere. And then this property is open to the river as well. So when you're on this property, you look to the right, you see the Great Cross. So when we say the Spanish landed and met with the natives for the first Mass and first Thanksgiving, it was the Timucuan that lived here at the village of Seloy. And then the statue to our right, that's Pedro Menendez. He is the founder of St. Augustine. All right, from here, we're heading back to stop number 1. That's our main stop there at the old jail, the main depot. Looks like we are all clear. No more on, no more off. Charlie's in motion. I'm sorry? Do you have your tickets? Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you meant with the drinks? Yeah, just no alcohol. Yeah. No, you can't have alcohol on it. You can have a water. Or a pop. That's about it.
No one would know.
Alright, here we go. No more on, no more off. Charlie's in motion. Reminder to please stay seated, keeping yourself and your belongings inside the trolley at all times. Now as we head back to stop number 1, I've got another little partial quiet zone, so I'm going to go off the microphone here, but I've got a little message for you from our CEO.
Hello, this is Chris Balan. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Conductor of Historic Tours of America. I hope that you're enjoying your day experiencing St. Augustine's rich history and old world charm. Soon we'll be arriving at stop number 1, Old Town St. Augustine, home to several of St. Augustine's best attractions. Step back in time at the oldest store museum experience. Take a ride on Flagler's Railroad to Key West in the St. Augustine History Museum. Get locked up at the old jail and shop for gifts and souvenirs at Gator Bob's Trading Post. One of the best ways for our company to find out how we're doing is to hear from you. It takes just a minute to fill out a comment card, and you'll be able to let me know what you thought about your tour today. Just drop it in the mailbox and I'll pay the postage. It's very simple, but very important to us. It's only when we hear from you, our honored guests, that we're able to improve what we're doing as the nation's storyteller.
All right. Well, I would say thank you for hanging out with me on my portion of the tour, for being with Old Town Trolley today. We do thank you in advance. We do appreciate it if you take time to fill out those comment cards or do a Google review. Make sure and shout out a tour guide or a driver that stood out for you today. We do also thank you in advance. We appreciate any gratuities you extend towards us. Now you can stay on to continue the tour. We'll just be taking a few moments to change out drivers. But if you are going to exit here at stop 1, please remain seated until I come to a complete stop and you hear that bell. Once you hear the bell, then you're going to safely exit to your left. To your left only on my side of the trolley here. Turning around and going down backwards like you're climbing down a ladder. Holding the handles and uprights.
So what are we gonna do?
I don't know. What are you gonna do?